This is a Lamborghini Aventador, and can you believe it's been around for over 11 years? But this one is not like the others. It's the new Ultimae, and it's the last pure 12-cylinder car Lamborghini will ever make. Now, I know this engine will live on in some electrified form or another, but the setup we know today ends here. So that begs the question, is the Aventador Ultimae the ultimate Aventador? And that's a bit of a tough question to answer because back when this car came out in 2011, I was 15 and more focused on my Tumblr blog than I was the latest Italian supercar. So I turned to the road tests of the time, and it seems that Motor Trend, Car and Driver, and Road and Track all agreed. The Aventador was a huge leap forward over the Murcielago, replacing a car you feared with one you trusted. But that's a bit of a double-edged sword, as some criticized it for being a bit too tame and easy to drive. Simply point and squirt and you got endless grip and a really forgiving driving experience. So, if the Ultimae is the Aventador's swan song, it needs to be a hit. Well, thankfully it has all the necessary ingredients to make a chart-topping classic, because the Ultimae is the most powerful Aventador ever made, even more so than the track-ready SVJ of a few years ago. In fact, the Ultimae slots right in between the Aventador S and the SVJ. It's 55 pounds lighter than an Aventador S and 55 pounds heavier than an SVJ. However, with 10 additional horsepower under the hood, the Ultimae has the exact same power-to-weight ratio as its racing sibling. Total output, we're looking at 769 horsepower and 531 foot-pounds of torque. That allows the Ultimae to reach 60 miles an hour in under 2.8 seconds before charging toward a top speed of 221 miles an hour. Now, while power is up over the original Aventador, the power delivery has changed as well. Now, this car peak power comes in at 8,500 RPM, which is pretty close to that of the OG Aventador, but torque is up from 5,500 RPM to 6,750, which is a noticeable increase. There's more torque, but it's a little bit harder to reach. So the result is you have to rev this car really, really high to get the most out of it. And so you'll find yourself sort of grazing the red line, trying to squeeze the most out of what this car can offer. Don't get me wrong, it's not slow in pretty much any gear, but to get the full speed, you need high revs. Upshifts are really, really hard. Flat out upshifts will shake the whole car. So if you do them mid-corner, you can easily upset the balance of the thing. This car is at its happiest when going very, very quickly. Around town, it is utterly miserable. There's an automatic mode, sure, but should you use it? I really don't think so. Around town, this car is sort of fishing for what gear it needs. It doesn't really know where it should be, and frankly, it's not where it's meant to be. Have a heavy foot and you plant it, the car will reward you tremendously because it becomes way more stable, way more composed that way. If you sort of approach it with a bit of fear and kind of like not fully decisive, then it becomes a bit wobbly, a bit sort of sloppy on the road. And so this is not a car you can go halfway in. You have to be in it to really get the most out of it. So like with the mechanics, the Ultimae is a blend of the SVJ and the Aventador S on the styling front as well. However, one look at the front end reveals it's more Aventador S than anything else. And I think overall, the Aventador is aging extremely well. If you tossed me the keys and told me it was a brand new supercar, I would have no trouble believing you. And I think it works especially well in this flat gray finish, which is a $17,000 option, so let's be glad it's a good one. So this front end, although quite angular, is completely intentional. Like most modern supercars, it's built to channel air to the car's various radiators and ducts, cooling items such as the brakes. And one big piece is that the front splitter isn't quite as aggressive as the one on the SVJ, which makes it a little bit more drivable around town. I'm very grateful for that. All right, the wing. There's no big wing like on the SVJ, but the Ultimae has a few tricks of its own. It has active aero just like the original Aventador in 3 positions: closed, maximum performance, and maximum handling. It changes as you move up and down in speed and through the car's various driving modes that change its attitude. Trust me, this car has plenty of attitude, especially when you start messing around with all of its drive modes. You have Strada for the street, Sport, and Corsa, which is your pretty much all-out track mode. Strada is great because it dials things down a bit and it softens the suspension. Sport is a nice little midpoint where you can really get the most out of the car without the transmission, suspension, and engine being in full aggressive mode. That can be a little bit much to handle. Corsa is a little bit much to handle. The car gets really stiff. That's the mode I'm in right now, and you get the full aggressive powertrain. I like this mode for brief periods of time. As you can kind of notice, I'm a little bit bouncing in my seat. It's really stiff. And don't get me wrong, the inboard pushrod suspension is pure magic, and it now has magnetic dampers, which means that when you go into Strada, it does a better job of softening up, so you have a bit more of a duality in terms of all-out speed and around town comfort. Not to say it's perfectly comfortable, but it's getting better. It's improving. And the fact of using inboard suspension means that you don't have that as unsprung weight, which makes the Aventador feel a little bit lighter on its feet. Now, don't get me wrong, this car doesn't necessarily feel heavy, but it feels big. It has a claimed dry weight of just over 3,400 pounds, which you add fluids and stuff, maybe you're closer to 3,700 pounds, but it doesn't really feel crazy heavy. It just feels big on the road. This is a very long and wide car. Now, this car borrows from the Aventador S in a very big way, that being its rear wheel steering system. And I didn't think that would make as much of a difference as it does. Reading the original reviews of the Aventador when it came out, people praised its grip, but not necessarily its overall agility and turn-in. That's something the Ultimae 100% fixes. This car is incredibly agile when attacking corners. Again, that grip is there, but now we have the agility and the turn-in. Now we do have hydraulic steering, which is awesome. It has a nice weight to it, and as you move up the driving modes, it gets a little bit heavier to the point where it becomes maybe a little artificially heavy, but it works well. There's a nice bit of weight to it. There isn't as much feel as I would like, but it's weighted nicely, and again, the front end is so agile that it more than makes up for it. Now, I know it's about 20 times louder than any regular Corolla, but when compared to the SVJ, the Ultimae is actually kind of tame. Keep it under $4 grand and it won't scream at all. In Strada mode on the highway, it goes dead silent. So there's a real duality in the personality of this car. Now, get it up to redline and it screams. It's gonna be one of the loudest cars you've ever heard, especially on the inside. Now, Lamborghini has tried to tone things down with additional sound deadening and more people-friendly seats. That's what makes the difference between the SVJ and the Ultimae in terms of weight. So it's 55 pounds heavier, this car, but it's a bit more comfortable for the passengers. In here, this looks like a 2022 model year car, as long as we ignore the screen in the center. More on that in a second. But there's a digital instrument cluster in front of me that changes with all the drive modes. It looks sharp, it looks crisp, and the animations are actually really well made. But if we turn our attention to the infotainment screen, it's an old Audi system, and it certainly feels like it. It does have Apple CarPlay connectivity, but it doesn't work all that reliably, and you have all this older switchgear, which is actually kind of a plus because newer cars have these touch capacitive buttons and they kind of suck, if I'm honest. This is good, the software is not, but it's okay. It's frankly the downer of the interior, but I really don't care. In a car with this driving experience, it does so many other things well, I could care less that it has an old system. Now, I know I mentioned earlier that this would be the last Aventador ever, but that was a bit of a lie, because while there are 350 coupes scheduled for production, there are also 250 roadsters. Base price, $498,000. However, this car, with optional extras such as the paint, the sound system, the wheels, it comes in at $560,000. Is that expensive? Sure, but then again, nothing looks, nothing drives, and nothing sounds like an Aventador. Sure, people criticize this car for being a bit of a dinosaur in the modern supercar age, but at the very least, it's authentic. It knows what it is, and it's not trying to be anything else. After spending time with this car, it's clear to me that this is not only the most powerful Aventador ever, it's also the best looking and the most fun to drive. So if Lamborghini made any mistake with this car, it was not calling it the Ultimate, because it truly is the ultimate Aventador. So as always, thank you so much for watching. If you want to watch another video, please make sure to click either here or here. And as always, please remember to like and subscribe because it helps us grow a lot. And I'll be checking out the comments for vehicle suggestions. I want to know what you want to see, and I'll do my best to try and get it for a future video. But until then, take care.